They called it the Golden State, the land where everything seemed possible, the place where people came chasing not just wealth but hope, the dream of a better life under endless sunshine. For decades, California was more than just a state. It was an idea, a promise, the ultimate symbol of success, beauty, and freedom. You could be born poor in the middle of nowhere, come to California with nothing but ambition, and somehow make it. Hollywood told those stories. Silicon Valley proved them. From the film industry to the tech boom, the Golden State shaped the world's imagination. It built billionaires, pop culture, and revolutions in technology. Every new beginning seemed to start there. But what happens when the dream becomes too big to sustain? When paradise starts to crumble from within? Because behind the beaches, behind the palm trees and red carpets, something darker was always growing, quietly, in the shadows of its own success. For years, people ignored the signs. The rising costs, the crowded freeways, the fires, the homelessness, the addiction. It was easy to look away as long as the illusion of California remained alive, as long as someone else was still dreaming. But slowly, the cracks widened. The dream started to rot, and one by one, the believers began to leave. Let's rewind a little, back to the roots of this dream. In the early 20th century, California was marketed as a land of endless opportunity. Cheap land, perfect weather, gold in the rivers, and jobs for anyone willing to work. Families migrated from across the United States, escaping dust storms and poverty. They planted roots in California's fertile soil and built lives they could never have imagined before. By the 1950s and 60s, California wasn't just a dream. It was the American dream in physical form. The freeways were open, homes were affordable, and middle-class families thrived. People bought their first cars, built their first homes, and sent their children to college. It was a shining example of what America could be. But fast forward to now, and that dream feels almost like a cruel joke. The state that once offered freedom now feels trapped in its own contradictions. The same paradise that promised abundance is choking on scarcity. Today, California has the highest poverty rate in the entire country when adjusted for cost of living. The average price of a home in Los Angeles has skyrocketed past $800,000, and a one-bedroom apartment can cost nearly $4,000 per month. People aren't chasing dreams anymore. They're running from debt, from taxes, from crime, from fires, from floods, and from a system that seems built to break them. Still, every year, millions of tourists visit and see the same postcard image. The Hollywood sign, the palm-lined streets, the beaches of Malibu, the golden glow of the sunset. But what they done at sea, what they were not supposed to see, is what's happening just a few blocks away. In Los Angeles, entire streets are lined with tents. In San Francisco, stores close down daily because of theft and safety issues. In Oakland, families move out faster than new ones can move in. It's not just a few bad neighborhoods anymore, it's spreading, and people are asking, how did we get here? Some blame politics, others blame greed, but maybe it is something deeper. Maybe the same ambition that built California also planted the seeds of its collapse. You see, California has always been addicted to growth. More people, more money, more innovation, more everything. But growth without balance eventually collapses under its own weight. As more people came chasing the dream, demand exploded for housing, jobs, water, energy, and space. But instead of managing it, the state doubled down on regulations, taxes, and promises it couldn't keep. The result? A system stretched to the limit, where the rich get richer, the poor get forgotten, and the middle class disappears. And yet, people keep coming, because the illusion of California is powerful. It tells you that if you can just work a little harder, move to a better area, or land the right job, you can make it. That's the magic that's kept the dream alive all these years. But it's also what's killing it. Because when too many believe in a dream that no longer exists, disappointment turns to anger, and anger into exodus. In the last few years alone, over 1.5 million people have left California. Families, small business owners, retirees, even major corporations like Tesla, Oracle, and Hewlett-Packard have packed up and moved to states like Texas and Florida. They are not leaving because they hate California. They were leaving because they can't afford to stay. The same land that once promised freedom now demands a price almost no one can pay. And that's where our story begins. Not in the golden light of the California sunset, but in its fading glow. Because this isn't just about a state losing its shine. It's about what happens when a dream becomes a trap, when paradise starts to collapse under the weight of its own perfection. This is the story of the fall of California. And trust me, what's coming next will shock you. In recent years, California has experienced something unprecedented, a mass departure of residents on a scale rarely seen in modern American history. Over 1.5 million people have left the state in search of a more livable, affordable, and safe environment. Families uproot their lives, children are forced to leave schools, and workers abandon careers they once thought secure. Entire corporations, some worth billions, have packed up and relocated to other states, chasing lower taxes, reduced regulations, and calmer business climates. The reasons for this exodus are layered and complex, but they all converge on one core truth. Life in California has become increasingly unsustainable for the majority. The cost of living has skyrocketed. A small apartment in Los Angeles can easily cost $4,000 per month, forcing many families into impossible financial decisions. Homes, once symbols of stability and achievement, are now selling for more than $750,000 on average, a sum that feels unattainable for middle-class residents. Taxes continue to rise, fuel prices climb steadily, and a maze of regulations creates endless obstacles for both individuals and businesses trying to survive. But financial strain is only part of the problem. Social stability is eroding alongside economic security. Streets that were once vibrant with culture and commerce are now riddled with theft, vandalism, and drug-related crime. San Francisco, long considered the heart of technological innovation and entrepreneurial spirit, has seen neighborhoods abandoned as stores shutter their doors in response to looting and crime. Residents walk past boarded-up windows and graffiti-covered streets, witnessing a city that once built the future struggling to manage the present. The departure of major companies only exacerbates the problem. Tech giants like Tesla, Oracle, and HP have relocated to states offering more favorable business climates, taking thousands of jobs with them. Each relocation is more than a headline. It represents families forced to make tough choices, employees suddenly facing unemployment, and communities losing not just economic activity, but identity and cohesion. Even small businesses are not immune. Rising rents, high insurance costs, and bureaucratic hurdles have caused countless stores and restaurants to close their doors, leaving neighborhoods stripped of the vitality that once defined them. For those who remain, daily life has become a careful navigation through uncertainty. Residents worry about safety while driving through neighborhoods that were once considered safe. Public services are strained, schools are overcrowded, emergency response times lag, and homelessness continues to grow at alarming rates. Families are forced to make difficult choices every day, between paying rent, feeding their children, or seeking medical care. The American dream, long associated with California, now feels like a burden too heavy for most to bear. The exodus also tells a story about shifting priorities and values. While some people leave out of economic necessity, others depart seeking freedom from the bureaucracy, restrictions, and challenges that now define life in the state. People are no longer chasing only the promise of opportunity. They are seeking survival, stability, and dignity. For some, this means moving to Texas, Florida, or other states where costs are lower and life feels more manageable. For others, it means leaving the country altogether. Yet California's departure story is not merely about economics. It is also about the erosion of hope. When a state that once represented innovation, opportunity, and progress starts losing its residents in droves, it sends a signal far beyond its borders. It is a cautionary tale. Even the brightest dreams can falter when governance, economics, and societal cohesion fail to support them. Despite the challenges, millions remain, those who have nowhere else to go, those determined to persevere, or those still clinging to the dream of California. But every day, the weight of social collapse grows heavier. Public spaces are increasingly dominated by homeless encampments. Traffic congestion worsens and crime rates remain high. essential services, from sanitation to healthcare, struggle to meet the demand, leaving residents feeling frustrated and neglected. The Great Exodus has transformed California's identity. Once, it was a magnet for ambition and talent, a place where the best and brightest flocked in pursuit of success. Now, it has become a state of departure, a cautionary tale of dreams deferred and opportunities lost. What remains is a patchwork of wealth and despair, of thriving businesses juxtaposed against struggling communities. The streets tell a story more sobering than any statistic. The human cost of policies, priorities, and decisions that have pushed so many to leave. California is losing more than people. It is losing its essence, the cultural and economic lifeblood that once made it great. As families move away, neighborhoods empty, and businesses shutter, the state faces an uncertain future. The exodus is a mirror reflecting the consequences of imbalance between wealth and poverty, growth and sustainability, vision and execution. It is also a warning. When the dream becomes unaffordable for the many, it survives only for the privileged few, and the rest are left behind. In the shadow of this mass departure, the question arises: what will remain of California when the dream that built it is no longer attainable for most? Streets may still be paved, skyscrapers may still shine, but the soul of the state, its people, its vitality, and its promise is vanishing, one family at a time. The Great Exodus is more than a migration, it is a turning point. It marks the moment when the Golden State, once synonymous with possibility, becomes a symbol of collapse. And as people leave, the world watches, learning a lesson about the fragility of dreams, the power of policies, and the cost of chasing progress without balance. California remains one of the wealthiest states in the nation, a place where fortunes are made overnight and billionaires seem to multiply by the day. From the glimmering mansions of Beverly Hills to the sprawling estates along the Pacific Coast Highway, the state displays a level of wealth that can seem almost unreal. Luxury cars line the streets, designer shops thrive, and private jets dot the skies above. In certain circles, life appears effortless, glamorous, and full of endless possibility. But this wealth is concentrated in the hands of a select few. For the majority of Californians, the story is painfully different. Nearly 1 in 5 residents now lives below the poverty line, struggling to survive in a state that is supposed to represent the pinnacle of the American dream. Homelessness has reached staggering levels, with encampments stretching for miles in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and even smaller cities that once felt secure and vibrant. Families are forced to live in tents, cars, or overcrowded apartments, with children growing up in environments where survival often takes precedence over education and opportunity. The gap between rich and poor in California is staggering, almost impossible to ignore. On one side, billionaires enjoy private beaches, elite schools, and world-class healthcare. On the other, ordinary citizens navigate streets where crime is common, services are scarce, and the cost of living is insurmountable. It is a state of two worlds, one thriving in opulence, the other barely surviving. The disparity is not merely economic. It shapes daily life, social mobility, and even the perception of safety and community. Government attempts to address the crisis have often been insufficient, mismanaged, or poorly timed. Billions are spent annually on social programs, homelessness initiatives, and housing projects. Yet the problem only seems to worsen. Bureaucratic inefficiencies slow progress, while well-intentioned regulations sometimes exacerbate the very issues they are meant to solve. For decades, leaders promised equality, environmental sustainability, and economic opportunity. Yet these promises often translated into layers of taxes, complex laws, and red tape that stifled small businesses, discouraged innovation, and pushed families away from cities that were once welcoming. Public services, strained to the breaking point, struggle to meet the needs of residents. Schools are overcrowded, hospitals are overrun, and emergency services are stretched thin. Basic infrastructure, sanitation, utilities, and transportation faces challenges that were unimaginable just a generation ago. Streets are littered with debris, neighborhoods are neglected, and the most vulnerable populations are left to fend for themselves. Even in the midst of California's immense wealth, Large portions of the population live in a state of constant uncertainty and insecurity. The contrast between luxury and destitution is not limited to physical surroundings. Social cohesion is fraying. Wealthy communities often isolate themselves behind gates, private security, and exclusive amenities, while the majority navigate a world of rising crime, limited opportunity, and limited social support. The psychological toll is immense. The dreams of those who came to California seeking prosperity and fulfillment are being replaced by anxiety, despair, and the daily struggle for survival. California's housing crisis is at the heart of this inequality. Skyrocketing rents and housing prices make ownership unattainable for most. Homelessness continues to rise, affecting not just adults but entire families, including children who face disrupted education, inadequate nutrition, and exposure to unsafe environments. For many, the state's promise of opportunity feels like a trap, a place where survival is uncertain and the cost of living is relentless. The consequences ripple outward. Small businesses, once the backbone of communities, are closing at alarming rates due to high operating costs, theft, and reduced customer spending power. Neighborhoods that were once lively and vibrant are now deserted. Streets echo with emptiness, and local culture suffers. Even wealthy enclaves cannot remain untouched. As inequality grows, social tensions rise, contributing to unrest, protests, and political polarization. California's plight is a stark reminder of the dangers of concentrated wealth and unchecked inequality. When a state becomes divided between extremes, it cannot function as a cohesive society. Opportunity, once a right rather than a privilege, becomes increasingly reserved for those who can afford it. The American dream, long synonymous with California, is now a reality only for the few. For the majority, the dream exists only in memory, in advertisements, or in stories of what could have been. Yet, despite the ruins and despair, California still pulses with life. Innovation continues, art flourishes, and beauty remains in the mountains, deserts, and oceans. But beneath the surface, the cracks deepen. The gap between riches and ruins is widening every year, a structural fracture that threatens the stability of the state itself. Those who have wealth can protect themselves and even prosper, but those without are left to navigate a collapsing system where survival is increasingly uncertain. California is a state of extremes, a lesson in contrasts. It is both a beacon of human achievement and a warning of societal failure. The Golden State's opulence and decay coexist side by side, creating a portrait of inequality that is difficult to reconcile with the dream that built it. It is a cautionary tale for other regions and nations. No matter how bright the promise or powerful the wealth, neglecting balance, equity, and sustainability can lead even paradise to crumble. The story of California's riches and ruins is ongoing. It challenges perceptions, forces reflection, and asks uncomfortable questions about the price of progress. Who really benefits when wealth is concentrated and opportunity is limited? What happens when society prioritizes the comfort of the few over the survival of the many? And perhaps most importantly, how much longer can a state survive when the gap between its richest and its poorest grows ever wider? California's wealth is undeniable, but so is its decay. And until the state confronts this reality, the Golden State will remain a cautionary tale of what happens when riches coexist with ruins. California has always been a land of extremes. Its climate, geography, and environment are breathtakingly beautiful, yet unforgiving. Rolling hills, lush forests, and sun-soaked beaches coexist with arid deserts, parched valleys, and towering mountains. But in recent decades, nature itself has begun to mirror the turmoil found in society, creating a state where human and environmental crises collide in unprecedented ways. Wildfires are no longer rare tragedies. They are now a yearly, sometimes relentless, reality. Entire towns can be reduced to ashes in a single afternoon, leaving families displaced, livelihoods destroyed, and communities traumatized. The scale and intensity of these fires have increased dramatically due to climate change, prolonged droughts, and decades of forest mismanagement. Skies turn orange and red, filled with smoke so thick it blankets cities far from the flames, making air quality hazardous and daily life a constant struggle. Even the simplest tasks like commuting to work or sending children to school become dangerous undertakings when the air is unbreathable and ash coats every surface. Meanwhile, the drought gripping the state is transforming fertile valleys into dust bowls. California once produced nearly 13% of all U.S. crops, feeding not only its own population, but the entire nation. Today, reservoirs shrink to a fraction of their capacity. Rivers recede and farms struggle to survive. Orchards wither under relentless sun, vineyards lose their yield, and water rationing becomes the new normal. Farmers face impossible decisions: sell their land, abandon their crops, or invest in expensive water alternatives that many cannot afford. The land that once nourished millions is now becoming inhospitable, a stark reminder that even the most abundant resources are finite. The contrast between wealth and survival is painfully visible in this environmental crisis. While the majority of residents face water restrictions, brown lawns, and empty reservoirs, affluent communities maintain lush greenery and sparkling pools, protected by private resources and connections. The sight of these two Californias, one struggling to endure, the other seemingly untouched, highlights the social and economic disparities that have grown alongside environmental degradation. Nature, like society, does not distribute its benefits equally, and in California, this inequality is stark. The fires and droughts are not just environmental concerns, they are deeply social and economic issues. When wildfires destroy homes, businesses, and infrastructure, the consequences ripple through communities, affecting schools, hospitals, transportation, and local economies. Insurance rates skyrocket, rebuilding costs soar, and many families are left unable to recover. The state government, while allocating billions to firefighting and disaster relief, often struggles to keep pace with the scale of destruction. Residents experience repeated trauma as entire neighborhoods are consumed by flames, only to face uncertainty when rebuilding amid rising costs and environmental risks. Moreover, the combination of wildfires and drought has long-term implications for public health. Smoke and ash exacerbate respiratory problems. Heat waves endanger the elderly and vulnerable populations, and water scarcity threatens sanitation and access to safe drinking water. As climate patterns grow more unpredictable, these crises no longer follow seasonal schedules. They strike when least expected, leaving little time for preparation and recovery. Agriculture, California's backbone, faces perhaps the greatest challenge. Crops that were once reliable sources of food for millions are failing, forcing farmers to abandon long-standing traditions and communities to import food at higher costs. Vineyards producing world-renowned wines, orchards yielding nuts and fruits, and farms supplying vegetables to the nation all confront the harsh reality of a changing climate. The economic impact is staggering, as the loss of agricultural output affects jobs, supply chains, and national food security. The environmental collapse also underscores the interconnectedness of human decisions and natural consequences. Urban sprawl, water mismanagement, and overuse of resources have intensified the drought's impact. Fire-prone areas have expanded as forests are neglected, and residential zones push deeper into vulnerable lands. California's beauty, once a symbol of hope and prosperity, is now a complex puzzle of wealth, risk, and survival. Yet, amidst this devastation, there are stories of resilience. Communities band together to fight fires, volunteer programs supply water to struggling areas, and innovative technologies attempt to conserve and manage scarce resources. Still, these efforts, while commendable, often feel like temporary fixes in the face of systemic challenges. The underlying issues, climate change, inequality, and environmental mismanagement, remain, creating a cycle of destruction that is difficult to break. Every year, as wildfires rage and reservoirs dry, the Golden State becomes a living warning of the cost of neglecting balance between humans and nature. The land of sunshine and abundance is now a land of caution, a place where survival requires awareness, preparation, and sacrifice. The environmental collapse is a reflection of the larger collapse in society. When wealth, resources, and safety are unevenly distributed, crises magnify their impact and the most vulnerable suffer the most. California's fire and drought crisis is not just about weather or climate, it is about a state confronting its limits. It asks uncomfortable questions about growth, sustainability, and the price of ambition. The land that once symbolized endless opportunity now serves as a stark reminder. When paradise is pushed beyond its natural limits, nature has the power to reclaim what was once taken for granted. And so each summer, as fires sweep across the hills, and each winter, as rain fails to fall, California reminds the world that no dream, no matter how golden, can survive without respect for the forces that sustain it. The flames and the drought are more than disasters. They are lessons written in smoke and dust, lessons about survival, resilience, and the fragile beauty of paradise. California stands today at a crossroads. It is a land of paradoxes, beauty and decay, wealth and poverty, innovation and collapse. The Golden State continues to inspire awe with its beaches, mountains, and iconic cities. Yet beneath the surface lies a reality that is impossible to ignore. The dream that once built California, a dream of opportunity, freedom, and the promise that anyone could rise, has become increasingly unattainable for most. The American dream, long symbolized by this state, was simple. Hard work, ambition, and creativity could lead to success. But in modern California, the dream has a cost so high that millions cannot pay it. Housing prices have skyrocketed beyond reason. Rent consumes a disproportionate share of income, leaving families to make impossible choices between shelter, food, healthcare, and education. Taxes, fees, and regulations continue to climb, making even middle-class stability fragile. In many cities, the streets are dominated by homeless encampments, drug activity, and public disorder. Safety, once taken for granted, has become a daily concern. The stark inequality between the wealthy elite and the struggling majority underscores the collapse of opportunity. Billionaires maintain palaces overlooking the Pacific, private schools and gated communities seemingly insulated from the crises surrounding them. Meanwhile, the working class fights for survival, and entire neighborhoods descend into despair. Children grow up walking past tents, trash, and crime, learning from an early age that the world of opportunity may not be available to them. The dream is no longer universal. It is reserved for those who can afford it, while the rest are left navigating a system that has failed to provide equity, safety, or hope. Environmental crises exacerbate this social collapse. Wildfires rage across the state, consuming forests, homes, and infrastructure. Droughts threaten water security, destroy crops, and jeopardize food supplies. Nature itself seems to punish the state for decades of overexpansion, resource mismanagement, and unchecked growth. In this context, survival has become a daily challenge for many Californians, while the affluent maintain their comforts and leisure, deepening the contrast and fueling frustration and despair. California's struggles reflect broader systemic failures: political polarization, bureaucracy, and the inability to reconcile ambition with sustainability. Leaders promised solutions, but policies often fell short or created unintended consequences, from business flight to rising homelessness. Social services, education, and infrastructure struggled to keep pace with the demands of a rapidly changing society. Residents feel abandoned, frustrated, and increasingly skeptical that the state can deliver on its promises. Yet, even as the dream falters, there are those who cling to hope. Entrepreneurs continue to innovate, artists create beauty, and communities come together to support one another in times of crisis. Despite the collapse, California is still a place where visionaries and risk-takers try to succeed. It is a state of resilience, determination, and creativity, but one under immense pressure. The question that looms over California is not simply whether it can recover, but whether it can do so before the collapse reaches an irreversible point. Some believe the state will reinvent itself, as it has multiple times in history, bouncing back from economic recessions, technological shifts, and social upheaval. Others fear that the fall has already begun, that what is dying is not merely the Golden State, but the very idea of the American dream as it was once imagined. A dream accessible to all, not just the privileged few. California's story serves as both a cautionary tale and a reflection of the challenges facing modern societies worldwide. When wealth is concentrated, opportunity is unequal, and natural resources are overused. Even the most prosperous regions can falter. The fall of California is a warning. If paradise can collapse here, where economic power, innovation, and natural beauty converge, then no society is immune from the consequences of imbalance and neglect. The impact goes beyond borders. California has long influenced culture, technology, and policy across the United States and the world. Its successes inspired ambition, its innovations shaped industries, and its ideals set a standard for progress. Now, as streets fill with the displaced, businesses close, and natural disasters intensify, the lessons from California echo far beyond its borders. Other regions watching this unraveling must ask themselves, what happens when dreams become too expensive, inequality too extreme, and nature too unpredictable? Ultimately, the collapse is not just about politics, economics, or climate. It is about the fragility of human aspiration. Dreams require more than ambition. They need balance, foresight, and the ability to sustain life, opportunity, and hope for everyone. California reminds us that even the brightest vision can falter when these elements are neglected. Some still believe in the possibility of renewal, that California can rise again and reclaim its place as a land of opportunity and innovation. But the warning is clear. If the state cannot reconcile its contradictions, address inequality, and respect the limits of its resources, the dream may be lost for generations. The fall of the Golden State is not just the story of a state. It is the story of an idea, a warning for a world chasing progress without balance. California, the land of endless opportunity, the place where dreams were born, now challenges us to confront the fragility of prosperity. When paradise collapses, it is not just a place that dies. It is a concept, a vision, and a promise that millions once believed could last forever. And if the Golden State can fall so far, the question lingers for the rest of the world. What hope remains when the dream itself begins to crumble?